This is a reminder video on how I do Bavarian leaning twist stitches as well as right leaning cross stitches. No cable needle is involved. This is simply picking up stitches, moving, twisting them without a cable needle. So these are new stitches that I'm starting out with for the first time ever, and I want to make sure that I have a video reminder that is clear and it works for me. If it happens to help anyone else, that's a great thing. So the first one that I'm going to work on is the LTW. It's also known as just LT. It's the left leaning twist. Some people call it the left traveling stitch. So in order to do this, I'm going to take my right needle, put it in the back, because I'm going to pick up the second stitch. I'm going to ignore this one real quick, and I'm only going to focus on the second one. So I'm going to pick it up from the back, just like this, and here's where it gets kind of scary. If you're not accustomed to doing cable work without a cable needle, you're going to take these two off the left needle completely. And then we're going to pick up, twist, and keep it moving from there. So I've got the needle in the back loop. I'm going to pull that off. That is scary as all get out, but I'm going to back this left needle up and put it into, come on, I'm going to put it right into that stitch, and you can see it went from that to that. It twisted automatically. I'm going to put this stitch right back on. Now I'm going to pull my yarn in the front and I'm going to purl. Then I'm going to knit that second stitch through the back loop. That way it twists and it leans left. The next one is going to be the RTW, right leaning twist, also known as the right traveling stitch. So what I'm going to do, keeping my right needle in the front now, I'm only going to focus on these two stitches right here. I'm going to put my right needle into the second stitch as if to purl. And again, here's where it gets kind of scary. I'm going to pull these off. Now, if this is too unnerving, I highly suggest getting another needle to hold that back stitch when you pull it off, or a cable needle, anything that you want. Just don't let that loose stitch go down, because you'll be a very mad knitter at that point. So I'm going to pull both the stitches off, and then I'm going to pick up this stitch, because it'll end up hanging in the back. I'm going to pick it up with the left needle. Okay, come on, focus. Okay, here we go. It pops off, it stays in the back. I'm going to grab it with the left needle and then put that first stitch right back on. Now I'm going to knit through the back loop, and then I'm going to purl that last little stitch, and you're done. Right leaning twist. So I'll end up doing it again and again on this one particular row. Let me just get to another part of the chart that needs it. Gotta zoom in here. All right, left leaning twist. I'm going to do that again. So right needle goes in the back. I'm only focusing on 2 stitches for this. Right needle in the back. I'm going to put my needle into the back of the 2nd stitch on the left needle. I'm going to take them both off, put my left needle, if I need to, I'm going to grab it, put my left needle into that hanging stitch that fell to the front, put that stitch that I had on the needle right back, and I'm still focusing on these 2 stitches. I'm going to purl, and then I'm going to knit through the back loop. Right leaning twist. Again, here we go. Right needle stays in the front. I'm only focusing on these 2 stitches. I'm going to put my right needle into the 2nd stitch like I'm going to purl it and pull both stitches off gently. And I want that back loop that's hanging, I want it to be on my left needle. I'll have to do that again because I think my fingers were all in the way, and I'm trying to look around a camera to do this. So I put them back on in their twisted positions, knit through the back loop and purl. Now let me get to another spot that requires it. Okay. I'll do the left leaning twist one more time. Focusing only on 2 stitches, left leaning twist. I want my right needle in the back. I'm going to put that right needle into the back of the 2nd stitch. I'm going to pull these off. Left needle goes into this hanging stitch, and it automatically twists. I'm going to put this stitch on, and then I would end up purling this one and knitting through the back loop. But I'm going to put this right back to the way it was originally and do it again. Holding that stitch so it does not drop. Okay, I'm back to original, just the way it was when I came to it. Now if you look, this is a knit stitch right here. This is a purl stitch. So when I twist these, that's why I end up purling first and then knitting through the back loop on the 2nd needle. Again, when I've come up to this point where I need to do the left leaning twist, the first stitch I come to is a knit stitch. The 2nd stitch is a purl stitch. So when I take these off of the left needle and I rearrange them and I twist them back, I twist them into the position that they need to be in, that's why the first stitch becomes a purl and the 2nd stitch becomes a knit through the back loop. Because when I take these off, this comes over here, this goes over there. They're twisting their positions. So let me show this again. So I'm back in starting position. Right needle for left leaning twist. Right needle goes in the back. I want to go into the back of the second stitch. I'm going to get these 2 stitches off of the needle. I want this hanging stitch to go onto my left needle, and you see it automatically twists the stitches. So my purl is here, my knit is now here, when before knit and then the purl is on this side. It literally just twisted. So I'm going to put that stitch back on the left needle. The purl stitch goes back on. This is why I purl. Come on. This is why I purl the first stitch, and then I knit through the back loop on the second to complete it. That's the left leaning twist. You see? Okay. Right leaning twist. Again, there's only 2 stitches to work with. There's nothing else. This is my stitch marker. First stitch is a purl. You can see the collar, or I call it a collar. And then the second one is a knit. And again, these are going to twist in opposite directions. When I take both of these off, this purl stitch, it'll fall in the back. The knit stitch will end up twisting, and then I'll end up having to knit through the back loop first and then purling. So let me show. This right needle, I want it in the front. I'm going to go into the second stitch as if to purl. I'm going to pull both of these stitches off. They just pop off. I want the left needle to go into that hanging purl stitch. You can still see the collar on there. Put that knit stitch back on the left needle, and you can see they're twisting. Now I'm going to knit the knit stitch through the back loop and purl the purl stitch, and now it's twisted. Now I've got to do that whole row all over again. So I hope you got a good cup of tea. But this will build some muscle memory. So I'm restarting my row, and I'll get right back to the left and the right leaning twists in a second. Okay. Left leaning twist. This is what I need to focus on. 2 stitches. I'm going to twist these, and this is how we do it. With the right needle for the left leaning twist. Right needle goes in the back. Put it in the second stitch in the back. These 2 stitches come off. Left needle, put it into the hanging stitch that's in the front, which is the knit stitch. Your purl stitch is in the back now. So when you move your needles back into working position, the stitches automatically twist. Put that purl stitch back on the right needle. Now you're going to purl that purl stitch. Bring your yarn to the front, purl the purl stitch, knit the knit stitch through the back loop, and you've completed left leaning twist. Right leaning twist. You're going to take your right needle, keep it in the front, only focus on the 2 stitches right there. With the right needle in the front, put your needle into the 2nd stitch as if to purl. It's a knit stitch, but do it. Put the right needle into the 2nd stitch as if to purl. Take the 2 stitches off the left needle. Take the left needle, put it into that stitch that is hanging off the back. And when you go back so your needles are in working position, it automatically twists. Put that stitch right back on, the one that was on the right needle. Now you can knit the first stitch through the back loop. Why? Because it's a knit stitch, it's a V. Now you're going to purl. You can see buried in there that little collar. You're going to purl that purl stitch. Looks messy in here, but this is what it ends up being. Okay, do this a couple more times to the end of the row. Make sure I don't lose my place. It's my twist. Okay, I'm back to where I need to do the left leaning twist. I'm going to take my right needle, put it in the back, left leaning twist, goes in the back. Again, right needle will go into the back of the 2nd stitch. Pull the stitches off, just those 2. I'm going to hold that stitch. Put my left needle into it. It automatically twists when I go back into working position. Put that last stitch back onto the left needle. Now I'm going to purl, and then I'm going to knit through the back loop. That was the left. Now let's do the right. Right needle stays in front for the right leaning twist. Insert into 2nd stitch as if to purl. Take both of the stitches off. Put the left needle into that hanging stitch in the back. Put your needles back in working position and take that stitch off of the right needle, put it back on the left. Now you're going to knit through the back loop, and then you're going to purl, and you've completed the right leaning twist. Let me get back to the last part, to the beginning of the round, and we'll do one more. And these are just knitting through the back loop knit stitches per pattern with regular old purls in between. Okay, and back to the last part. Again, left leaning twist. With left leaning twist, right needle goes in the back, enter second stitch through the back loop, pull them off, both of them. Take the left needle, put it into that hanging stitch that hangs in the front, go back to working position so that you can put the stitch on the right needle back on the left. Now you're going to purl, because this is really a purl stitch that you put back onto the left needle. Purl it, and then you're going to knit through the back loop for the second stitch, because it was a knit stitch and the pattern calls for you to knit through the back loop. The last one for this row is the right leaning twist. You're going to twist these two by taking the right needle, keeping it in the front as if to purl. Put your needle into the second stitch in the front. You're going to take both stitches off of the needle. You see that hanging stitch? You're going to put your left needle into it, and if it starts to do this, where you can't get to it, pinch it and put it onto the left needle. Or you can use a cable holder. Okay, it's on there. Put that other stitch from the right needle back on the left. You're still working with 2 stitches. You can see this is now a knit stitch on this side. The purl is over here. You twisted them. Originally it was purl then knit, but you twisted. Now it's knit and purl. Knit through the back loop and then purl, and you've completed the right leaning twist. This is my beginning of the round, my little milk on a cookie. Okay, go all the way back, change that to row 8. Now I'm going to focus only on the left leaning cross and the right leaning cross. Okay. LC, left leaning cross. Right needle, you put it in the back, and then you're going to put it into the second stitch. Again, only working with 2 stitches. Right needle in the back, you're only going to focus on the second stitch, and you're going to put it into the back of the second stitch. Again, you're going to have to take these 2 stitches off, put the left needle into the stitch that hangs, go back to working position, put that stitch back on the left needle that was on the right, and then you're going to knit through the back loop and knit through the back loop. And you can see that they were both knit stitches. If you didn't catch it at first, you can see the 2 V's. You just crisscrossed them. I'm going to purl these to get to the next spot. I'm going to do the left leaning cross one more time. Needle on the right goes in the back, and you can see I'm working with 2 knit stitches right there. Right needle goes in the back. If I said left needle, apologies. right needle goes in the back. You're only focusing on 2 stitches. Right needle goes into the second stitch in the back. Pull the 2 stitches off. Put your left needle into that stitch that hangs. Put your needles back in working position and it automatically crisscrosses. Put that stitch from the right needle back onto the left and then knit the knit stitch through the back loop. Knit the knit stitch again for that one through the back loop. And you've completed the left leaning cross. Now the right leaning cross. We're working only with 2 stitches. They're both knit stitches. With the right needle, for the right leaning cross, take your right needle, keep it in the front. Put it into the second stitch as if to purl. Pull both stitches off and you want the left needle to go into that stitch that ended up hanging in the back. Go back to working position and as you can see, it automatically twists. Put that stitch on the right needle back onto the left needle. Then knit through the back loop and one more time, knit through the back loop. And you've completed the right leaning cross. And as you can see, it leans to the right. Okay, let's do another left leaning cross. Right needle, you're going to put it in the back. Right needle, now put it into the second stitch through the back. Pull both of those stitches off, take the left needle, put it into the hanging stitch that's in the front. Put your needles back into working position and as you can see, it automatically crisscrosses. Take that stitch off of the right needle and knit it through the back loop and that second stitch, knit it through the back loop. Left leaning, and you can see it's pulling, but there it is. It's leaning over here to the left. One more left leaning cross here. Right needle goes in the back. Focus only on stitch 1 and stitch 2. Right needle in the back, put it into the second stitch through the back loop. Pull both of those stitches off. Take your left needle, put it into that empty hanging stitch that is in the front. Go back to working position. Put that stitch off the right needle, put it onto the left, and then knit those 2 through the back. That was the left leaning cross, and you can see it's following and it's going towards the left. Okay. Now we're going to do a right leaning cross. Need to make a quick note on my pattern. says RC for me. Right leaning cross. Again, focusing only on 2 stitches. Right needle goes to the front, put it into the 2nd stitch, take those 2 stitches off, and I want the left needle to go into that hanging stitch in the back. Go back to working position, which forces a crisscross. Take that stitch off of the right needle, knit through the back loop, and knit through the back loop. And that's the right leaning cross. And you can see how it forced itself to automatically go right. Okay. I'm trying to wrap my arm around camera to get to my Knit Companion app so I don't get lost. Okay, a left leaning cross. Take your right needle, put it in the back, put it into the 2nd stitch. Again, take off, left needle into the hanging stitch, put that stitch back onto the left needle, and then knit them both through the back loop. Another left leaning cross. I deliberately said nothing because hopefully you're getting the hang of it and your mind is able to speak it as I showed it. And you can see how it leans to the left. Building muscle memory. Okay, let's do another right leaning cross. Again, hopefully you're remembering. Right leaning cross, you can see it's going to the right. Let me go back, because I'm not done with my row. I'm just having to do a repeat, and I have my stitches broken into 2 sides, that's all. Okay, left leaning cross. And if we look at the direction, you can tell I just did left leaning cross. see if you can remember this one without the verbal. It's not fully on there. Let me fix that. There we go. Leans to the right. Hopefully you remembered that was the right leaning cross. Left leaning cross. Left leaning cross. Right leaning cross. These left ones are always easier because the stitch is in the front, easier to catch. At least I think so. Left leaning. Left leaning. Right leaning. And that's it. Beginning of my round. So that's how you do the left leaning cross LC right leaning cross RC, left leaning twist LTW, and right leaning twist RTW.